enough love for us to take care of us in those early years when we could do nothing for ourselves. Every living being is a sign of somebody who has received love, has received care of some, maybe sometimes minimal amount, but we all have. And so recognizing that with a heart of compassion is part of our practice. We are interrelated. We can't just be separate. We couldn't survive and we wouldn't want to. So that interdependence is an invitation to recognize the ways in which we are similar. We all want love. We all need love. We all need food. We are way more similar than we are even to the most othered beings in our minds, who don't look like us or speak our language or even nod, have the same body English, right? But we're very alike. Something like 96% of our body is water. Well, it's H2O wherever you go, right? Blood, the iron that we carry in our bodies, every being who has it got it from the same source. Some super galaxy collision, the time of the Big Bang. That's how these heavy metals got created. That's it. Nobody has dibs on them. We all have it. It's a way. Tom Chi is a very elegant speaker. You can Google him sometime. He speaks about this. So we have ways of reflecting cognitively on how we are connected, on how we are profoundly the same in our wants and desires. And the fact that we have different ideas about things, that we wear different clothing, that our skin is a different color, our eyes, our hair are different, is absolutely minuscule compared to this enormous consanguinity, literally, blood that we all share. And how can we open our eyes to that? How can we, whose eyes are somewhat open to that, open them even more and really live that out, not only in thought, but finding actions that we can do that are helpful, that alleviate the terrible situation in which we find ourselves, in which the suffering that is coming about nowadays, over, 130,000 in this country alone, United States alone, have died of COVID. Absolutely unnecessary. We have 4% of the world's population and 25% of COVID deaths. What does that mean? What went wrong? Tremendous suffering. And not only the people who die, but people who are sick, the people who take care of them, the people who have to live with and take care of the people who take care of them, the families, the people who will be living with health issues perhaps for the rest of their lives. It's not a small thing. And the distribution of this disease is unjust for reasons I mentioned earlier, and also because it didn't have to happen. So what causes suffering like this? What causes most suffering? Well, the Buddhists say, what do you know what they say? Desire, which will include a greed for money, for fame, for power. And some of that kind of greed has interfered with the distribution of PPE and testing and so forth in this country in ways no other country. It's terrible. It's disgusting. And then the inequality with which people are treated at the hands of the police, for example. If we haven't been aware of this since we've been growing up, we are now painfully aware. Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, so many absolutely unnecessary deaths. Unnecessary, unjust. Desire, hatred, greed. Desire for power, hatred. How can we hate people who are so much like us? But we do. It's part of world history since forever. People coming and stealing land from the people who were already there. And then the land is so fruitful, then they bring over other people that they can make work that land so that they can get rich. They, meaning this country, right? That's the story, the untold story, now getting more told. And what can we do? Certainly, we can, at the very least, begin by bringing it to mind, making it our intention to find out more about what we can do. This is the world we live in now. We're committed to compassionate activities. We sing for as long as space abides. Phew, it's going to take that long, right, to address all of these things. I don't know if some of you saw the Great Fifth, the new film about His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Very wonderful. You can Google it.
Great 14th.
The Great Fifth, the Great 14th. He's the only Dalai, the Great Fifth and the Great 14th. Now she's introducing this term for the 14th. It's a very powerful word. The Great means among the Dalai Lamas, they really excel. So His Holiness was speaking about this phrase that we sing, for as long as space abides, as long as the world remains. And you could just feel the tenderness and deep feeling. I don't know, but I know he says that every day. I feel sure I'm sure it's on his mind always. He said it's his favorite verse from the Shantideva Bodhicharya Avatar. And, you just feel he leaned over with, I don't know, some kind of feeling to say that. And for us, it has to mean that we take cognizance of injustice. It's a Western word. It's kind of a new word, speaking globally, but it means something to us. And we have to make it a focus of our intentionality as well. And we know we can't handle everything. Harvey's going to say something about that in a moment, but we can bring it to mind. And, when we talk about the cultivation of the 7 cause and effect precepts that you're familiar with, we reflect how, of all the kindness that we receive from other beings, whether we think of it in terms of past lives or we consider the food in our plate and all the infinite interdependence of living beings that brought this about, the bees, the birds, the people, right? We say, oh, I'm connected to all of these people I don't even know, but I'm connected to them and I must serve them in some way. At the very least, I have to begin with intention. Everything begins with intentions. The Dhammapada famously says, mind runs before all things. And one of the very great convictions and experiences that we have in the Buddhist traditions is that we have a possibility, we know how, we learn how to transform our ideas into felt experience that moves us into action, right? We have hearing, thinking, and meditating. So if we start to reflect, all beings really are kind to us. No, that one's not. I don't like, that person irritates me too much. We know that over time, we can begin to digest that as a principle that we live from. And we can do that increasingly also with respect to racial injustice, which is just so in our faces these days that we can make use of it. We can seek to address it and to live our beliefs more and more in a way that can make a difference in the world. However.
So it's a very, very deep issue, big issue, and complicated. And I just want to say a few words about one small piece of it. And there is clearly a lot wrong, particularly with respect to racial injustice, that we are very, very much aware of nowadays. And we are aware of it, as Anne said, part of it is both the people who tend to do the most service, the people who are needing to continue to work and don't have the option not to work, and the people who then are getting sick at much higher rates because of socioeconomic kind of inequality of distribution, are people of color. And we're also considering, many of us, just what sorts of reparative, supportive, helpful action we can engage in, which is very, very important. And I think that's something that every individual will engage in themselves. I think every one of us is probably thinking of, what are ways that we can do to help people, to support people, to correct injustice? I mean, that's an ongoing question. And within all of that, I just want to mention one factor, and that is any of us who have been discriminated against or dealt with unfairly know that there can be anger, there can be fear. There can also be a very, very painful feeling of shame. And shame is something that, in many ways, we don't talk enough about in our culture, though it's just so enormously powerful. And so those who are on the receiving end of injustice, along with righteous anger, indignation, may also feel shame, may feel less than, is very, very painful. And typically, people don't like to feel shame. They usually respond to shame with feelings of anger or outrage or action. Maybe some people try to ameliorate it with chemicals. But also those of us who are even sensitive to what is going on by way of injustice and start seeing it and contemplating it, there can be an understanding of whether it be, let's say, messages that we have internalized from our culture, from our families, of our own feelings associated with race, that when we contemplate them, we may feel some shame, or we may contemplate what needs to be done and what is yet to be done, and how maybe little we as an individual can do, even though we may be doing some things that are very, very significant. But with that kind of comparison of all that needs to be done and what we as individuals can and will do, there can be feelings of shame. And so I just want to bring into awareness for all of us that when we're dealing with something like the inequalities associated with race and the injustices associated with race, there's just a kind of tsunami of shame that can be occurring. And with shame, there can be defensiveness as well. And so things can get very, very heated very, very quickly, even if there's an attempt at some kind of helpful conversation. And sometimes people want to instruct one another about what's the right thing and what's the wrong thing, and who's guilty and who's not guilty. And it very, very quickly can devolve into finger pointing and again, experiences of shame. So I just want to bring to the fore that we who are practicing mindfulness and we are developing and oriented towards compassion, we, I think, need to be aware that shame can occur. We are liable to it. If we start speaking about inequality and injustice, we may feel shame about acts of omission or commission or intentions or feelings that we may have. And I just want to encourage, first of all of us to have a great deal of, certainly we have compassion for those who are on the receiving end of injustice, but for those of us who even want to consider injustice, the process itself will bring up all sorts of feelings that, and some of which may provoke shame. And I just want to encourage us to have compassion for ourselves and our colleagues. And to not let shame be a brake or a dam on any kind of constructive action. And again, I think every individual will be determining what they see as constructive action. Constructive action might just even start with wishing well to others. That is an activity. It might involve donation to organizations that we feel are working towards uplift. It might involve activities that we ourselves engage in that are relevant to overcoming injustice. I don't think any of us need to prescribe what any individual should do. I think we're all contemplating these things together, and we all hopefully have compassion and appreciation that people have their own circumstances and their own limitations in terms of what they may want or are able to do. But again, compassion and awareness that, much is afoot in our culture right now in terms of awareness of things need to be rebalanced. And that we just, even when we're aware of some feelings of either shame that we feel for ourselves, or even maybe we feel shame about what others are doing, that we tinge that with compassionate appreciation that none of us is going to be perfect, none of us is going to be superhuman, and that we are all probably on our own ways trying to be as good as we can be. And, given the community that we're in, I think a good presupposition is that we are all probably positively hearted. There are individuals in our culture who are dedicated to hate. And even for them, ultimately, we wish to have some compassion, some concern, some wish that they be free from the poisons of hate and intolerance. And so moving forward, again, with whatever actions each individual feels are appropriate to their station, I really want to encourage everyone to have a sense of compassion for themselves and an awareness that really in these situations, shame is undoubtedly going to arise. And the best we can do is just to acknowledge it's there, see what it's about, and have compassion for ourselves and our colleagues. And I think part of what we do want to mention is that there is this reading group that Dawn Mountain is supporting. Jennifer Daubenmeier is organizing it. If anybody has any interest in joining that reading group, they're going to be reading Rhonda McGee's, what is the title of the book?
The Inner Work of Racial Injustice.
And it's starting this Wednesday at 7, I think, Central Time.
I think it's 7 Central Time.
Not this Wednesday, next Wednesday, the 15th.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Emily.
As far as we know, it's limited in size. It's also being coordinated by Claire and Mark and Anne. And do you want to say anything, Mark?
No, I think you guys have summed it up well. I think we're happy to have everyone participate if that's something that would that they feel ready to do.
Yeah. Good. And
only 3 spots left. Wow. So there are 20. It's going to be limited to 20 and only 3 spots left. Very nice.
Yeah. And, some of what Harvey has just said could be relevant. There could be, people like to tell each other what to do often. So and I think look out for that.
I've been reading Rhonda McGee's book, and much of what I said is in tune with what she's saying in terms of really an attitude of compassion and appreciation for how difficult these subjects really can be for people.
Yeah. Good.
So we thank you for participating in that part of our Sunday.
And if you missed it, I just saw Tiffany come on. You can, it'll be on YouTube. Maybe we can let people know.
So, Emily, should we take just a short break and then resume?
Yes.
Okay, we will take a very short break and then we will resume with our meditation practice.
Sue, kung yapin Sue, kina?